He made MGM the greatest studio, the most glamorous studio.
It was the Tiffany of movie studios.
Louis B. Mayer was probably the most important figure in the history of Hollywood.
He was the ultimate star maker, but he was also manipulative, violent, and corrupt. The most powerful movie mogul Hollywood has ever produced.
Think of The Godfather. If he liked you, he loved you. If you crossed him, you were dead.
The fascinating story of Louis B. Mayer.
Probably one of the scariest figures in Hollywood has been Louis B. Mayer. He was known as the sinister beast of MGM Studios. And though you have a lot of celebrities and stars of that era that did have a lot of positive to say about him, I'm going to try to be really fair with this video and highlight some of his good deeds too, because as monstrous as he was described by many of the stars, there was some good that he had done also, not only to the entertainment industry, for the entertainment industry, but for his stars. But he was a very scary figure, and a lot of scary stuff here. Like, you think Diddy was bad? You think Weinstein was bad? According to a lot of the stars of the golden age, this was the true monster, and he is credited as the one who really made Hollywood. Hollywood would not be Hollywood without Louis B. Mayer. I mean, he is the reason why we have the Oscars and the Academy Awards. He started that. So we're going to get into some things in this video. But first, hey friend, welcome to my channel, Korean Allude, where we deep dive and break down the most iconic stars through history. If you're not yet subscribed, please be sure to do so. And if you're already subscribed, please turn on your notification bell so you never miss an upload. Now, without further ado, let's get into this video. So Louis B. Mayer's story reads like a Hollywood script in itself. It was complete with humble beginnings, relentless ambition, and eventual superstardom. He was born on July 4th, 1885, in Eastern Poland. Mayer was the son of Jewish parents, Jacob and Sarah. Seeking a brighter future, the family moved from their Soviet hometown to Long Island. However, the better life they dreamed of was not possible. Struggling with language barriers and job scarcity, Mayer's mother resorted to selling chickens door to door to make ends meet. Life was far from glamorous for young Louis. At just 12 years old, he dropped out of school to support his family. He initially joined his father in selling scrap metal, but soon branched out on his own. By the early 1900s, Mayer could be seen pushing a cart labeled junk dealer through town. It was a crappy childhood, recalled his nephew Gerald. His family's poverty and his father's limited English left Mayer with the weight of supporting his family.
He was born Lazar Mayer, the eldest son of his Jewish parents, Jacob and Sarah Mayer, in Russia in 1885.
He apparently did not get along with his father, or thought very little of him. But his mother, he had her chicken soup recipe on the menu in the commissary. I mean, if an actor wanted a raise, all the actor would have to do is say, I'm trying to buy my mother a new house.
His father was a little tiny man with narrow shoulders. You'd never look at him twice, but he had an explosive nature which Mayer inherited.
Desperately poor and hoping for a better life, the family emigrated to a port town in New Brunswick, Canada, when Mayer was 7. But it was from these difficult beginnings that Mayer honed the survival skills that would equip him for the ruthless world of Hollywood.
Despite these hardships, Mayer was driven. With his family predominantly speaking Yiddish at home, self-education was a challenge. Yet he found solace and inspiration at the York Theater, where he often watched vaudeville shows. And by 1904, at 20 years old, Mayer left St. John for Boston, continuing in the scrap metal business and taking various odd jobs to support his family when times were tough. Mayer's big break came when he renovated the dilapidated Gem Theater in Haverhill, Massachusetts, reopening it as an Orpheum on November 28, 1907. To cleanse the venue's seedy reputation, he debuted with a religious film, From the Manger to the Cross, in 1912. Within a few years, Mayer owned all 5 theaters in Haverhill, and with Nathan H. Gordon, created the Gordon-Mayer Partnership, which controlled the largest theater chain in New England. In 1918, Mayer made a bold move to Los Angeles, forming the Louis B. Mayer Pictures Corporation. His first production, Virtuous Wives, marked the beginning of a legendary career. Teaming up with B.P. Schulberg, they established the Mayers-Schulberg Studio. However, Mayer's real breakthrough came in April 1924 when his company merged with 2 others to form Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. The young Irving Thalberg was also brought into the fold as part owner and vice president in charge of production. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer quickly became Hollywood's crown jewel. Mayer took the reins, setting budgets, approving productions, and turning MGM into an unstoppable cinematic juggernaut. MGM, under Mayer's leadership, continued to produce successful movies. Mayer made himself head of production as well as studio chief. For the next 10 years, MGM grew and thrived. By 1939, MGM had its golden year, releasing timeless classics like Gone with the Wind, and Gone with the Wind was the most successful movie throughout American history. Like, blew the box office, just blew the box office. Even till today, it's still making numbers. And of course, The Wizard of Oz. Like, everyone has seen The Wizard of Oz, mandatory. And even then, The Wizard of Oz was not bigger than Gone with the Wind. And also Babes in Arms, which were a lot of successful films, came from him, while also debuting Hedy Lamarr, one of Mayer's personal discoveries. Under Mayer's leadership, MGM thrived, and he became the first person in American history to earn $1 million salary. For 9 years, starting in 1937, Mayer was the highest paid man in the United States, earning an astonishing $1,300,000 annually, which was equivalent to over $27 million. Today, what that would be today, that's what that was equivalent to then. No one was getting paid those type of numbers annually in the United States at all. So he was super filthy wealthy. Imagine the immense amount of power that came with. He was a huge deal. Known for his sharp managerial prowess, Mayer had a knack for hiring top-tier talent to do what he couldn't. Mayer's notorious temper was legendary, but those who were closely with him knew his rage was brief. He managed his team with a surprisingly patient hand, preferring to let department heads operate independently. However, if you failed to deliver box office hits consistently, then you were out the door. At its peak in the 1940s, MGM was bustling metropolis unto itself. The studio employed over 6,000 people, and it spanned 185 acres in Culver City, California, and boasted 3 entrances. It housed 40 cameras, 60 sound machines, and operated 6 separate lots, all interconnected by its own rail line. The MGM cafeteria fed over 2,700 people daily, while an in-house electrical plant provided enough power to light a town of 2,500 people, 25,000 people. Adding a touch of Hollywood glamour, MGM even had its own police force, 50 officers strong, larger than Culver City's entire police department, and had its own factory that was producing props for the movies. They employed a lot of people. It reminds me of Disney in Florida. Disney has its own police system, their own little government thingy going on here too. It's similar to that. So that's just to show you how massive MGM Studios was. Anywhere from 16 to 18 movies were being shot at one time. Mayer's hiring practices reflected his empire scale. He hired actors willing to commit to the MGM family for 3 or 7 years. Tempted by the industry's highest salaries only MGM could afford, every actor wanted to work for MGM. They were the only studio that literally could give you a huge salary fresh off the boat, right? But a lot of other studios that were coming up they couldn't compete with those type of salaries, those type of numbers. With executives, Mayer took a more personal approach, insisting on getting to know them before making any commitments. Talent manager Joe Cohn remembered Mayer's wisdom. One time he said to me, "Never be afraid of hiring a fellow smarter than you are. You'll only learn from them," end quote. Mayer prided himself on his ability to spot and nurture talent. Whether it was a producer, a department head, or even a janitor, his hands-off approach created a stable environment at MGM, contrasting sharply with other studios that frequently faced upheavals and reorganizations. This stability fostered a sense of job security among employees, ensuring that MGM remained a well-oiled machine. With MGM releasing a film each week, each week they had a new movie coming out. Mayer never lost his cool over a movie that flopped. If a movie encountered persistent production issues, canceling it was almost never on his agenda. He could afford not to. He trusted his gut and intuition, as actress Esther Williams observed. And although he rarely read full scripts, Mayer could piece together a story's potential success from a brief outline, using his instincts to guide the studio's cinematic output. Now, he had a system with that much money. You don't make that much money without some form of control and order with the stars that are making you that money. The stars were top priority for Louis B. Mayer, and he understood that. Without them, he could not function this well-oiled machine that was MGM. So once you signed with MGM, you are no longer your own person. You belonged to the MGM quote-unquote family. That's what he called it, family. And he had full and utter control over everything you did because you were walking money at this point. If you breathe, if you spit, it was money. And he had control over your spit. And I'm not even being funny because this came out of his own mouth. Mayer helped create what is termed the star system that they still use today. At one point, he explained the process he went through in creating a star, which is like a star development, right? He said, and I quote, "The idea of a star being born is bourgeois. A star is made, created, carefully and cold-bloodedly built up from nothing, from nobody. All I ever looked for was a face. If someone looked good to me, I'd have him tested. If a person looked good on film, if he photographed well, we could do the rest. We hired geniuses at makeup, hairdressing, surgeons to slice away a bulge here and there, rubbers to rub away the blubber, clothes designers, lighting experts, coaches for everything, fencing, dancing, walking, talking, sitting, and spitting," end quote. This is the concept of the Hollywood plant. As long as you had the face, hey, you can make us money because you're pretty. You don't need the talent. We'll figure that out for you. He started that whole system because he recognized how shallow we as consumers can be. As long as someone's handsome or pretty, we do not care. We have to change that, ladies and gentlemen, because this is what they do.
The charismatic new executive set out to produce 52 films, one for each week of the year. But to deliver, he would need to build a factory of make-believe, unlike any other. The producer took over the company's sprawling state-of-the-art dream factory in Culver City. But this factory depended on an assembly line of stars to keep it going. Before long, Mayer was not only discovering stars, he was manufacturing them.
He could actually take a nobody and in short order turn them into somebody that was on the public's mind.
Mayer believed that the movie star is a mythological creature who lives in Star Village, and somehow everything about that person is interesting to us.
To polish his stars to a perfect shine, Mayer hired dance teachers, makeup artists, wardrobe personnel, and an army of publicists. He treated his employees like members of a royal family.
I always refer to him as our daddy. Daddy Mayer.
Everybody was Mispuka. That means family in Yiddish.
But for his stars, being a member of the MGM family came at a price. He ruled over them with an iron fist.
Actresses could only have their babies certain periods, when movie production had halted or slowed down.
They must obey him in terms of dieting. If he saw the slightest inkling of weight, they had to go down to snips of lettuce.
And he forced them to sign ironclad contracts.
And you were actually like chattel at that point.
The contracts included a morals clause.
If any movie star committed immoral acts or in some way was convicted of an offense that disgraced himself in the studio, the contract could be voided.
Louis B. Mayer's temper was extremely violent. When Betty Garrett came to him and complained that she was being pinned down to a 7-year contract, he told her that she should accept the privilege and smashed her feet so she couldn't walk for days afterwards.
It was a slave system.
And if a star dared disobey him, Mayer would erupt.
Punishment at MGM, you'd be banished from the kingdom. And that didn't mean just you wouldn't work at MGM. You wouldn't work in the picture business, period.
In exchange for their services, however, Mayer offered his stars the ultimate reward.
He made them into even bigger stars than they already were.
By the end of the 1920s, Louis B. Mayer, the man who had broken into showbiz by selling tickets in a 2-bit theater, was running not only Hollywood's most powerful studio, he was running Hollywood. And the Academy Awards, an event Mayer had masterminded to create still more publicity for his stars, held its first award ceremony.
So Louis B. Mayer, the puppet master of Hollywood, was notorious for being more than just a studio head. He was an iron-fisted patriarch who micromanaged every aspect of his actors' lives. His control extended far beyond the set. especially with child actors. Mayer dictated where they shopped, dined, and which doctors they visited, offering unsolicited advice on how to better themselves. He controlled the doctors they visited so that he can have information from the doctors about his stars. Like, there was no doctor-patient privilege. No, he had to know every information, and we know that Diddy allegedly did that with Cassie. This was something that was happening long before in Hollywood. When you managed someone and you wanted full control of them, even their doctors, their dentists, all of that, you had full control of that. You always knew what was going on with their bodies and them at all times. His interference didn't stop at professional guidance. He even arranged marriages and relationships as well as friendships, and dealt with the dark side of fame, including alcoholism, people taking their own lives, or scandalous sensual behaviors. He controlled those things not leaking to the public whenever a star would get out of line and get into trouble. Young starlets like Elizabeth Taylor at the time, which I did a video for also, found Mayer's oversight suffocating. Taylor famously branded him a monster. In contrast, Mickey Rooney, who starred alongside Taylor when she was just 12, saw Mayer as a benevolent dictator. He was the daddy of everybody, Rooney recalled. They always talked badly about Mayer, but he was really a wonderful guy. He listened and you listened. End quote. But not all of Mayer's interactions were fatherly. Some were deeply unsettling and disturbing, especially with Judy Garland, one of MGM's brightest stars. She revealed in her unfinished autobiography that Mayer touched her without her consent when she was still a child. As Garland's personal problems mounted in the late 1940s, addictions to prescription, substances, severe eating disorders, and worsening mental health, Mayer tried to shield her star image while exploiting her for profit. The pressures from MGM, her mother, and the era's lack of understanding regarding diet and substances fueled her suffering. Producer Joe Pasternak once suggested canceling the over-budget film Summer Stock due to Garland's frequent absences. Mayer refused, defending Garland by saying, "Judy Garland has made this studio a fortune and good days, and the least we can do is give her one more chance. If you stop production now, it'll finish her," end quote. It was less an act of kindness, don't think he was being nice defending her, and more of a last-ditch effort to milk her remaining value for the studio, okay? Garland completed the film even though she was going through a lot of personal turmoil. He groped her, making her sit on his lap and placing his hand on her chest under the guise of teaching her to sing from the heart, and she was only a teen. Mayer cruelly nicknamed her My Little Hunchback due to her short stature and curved spine, pushing her to take diet pills to appear slimmer and less girlish. Mayer's actions left Garland plagued with ED and insecurities, contributing to her tragic premature demise. I will be releasing an updated video for Judy Garland next, in like 2 days, so check that out when I do. I just want to update her video a little bit, so the old one is no longer available. So Louis B. Mayer, the puppet master of MGM, was determined to craft an empire of family-friendly films, complete with starry-eyed child actors and puritanical values. To achieve this, Mayer transformed MGM into a factory full of young child stars, offering education, medical care, and acting tutors within its gilded gates. The studio boasted a roster of child stars including Jackie Cooper, Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland, Elizabeth Taylor, and Roddy McDowall, and many more, making it the epicenter of Hollywood's golden age of child actors. Mayer had a grand vision. His films would reflect an idealized world where marriage was holy, mothers were saints, and beauty and glamour reigned supreme. He made these values clear to everyone he worked with, famously telling screenwriter Francis Marion that he never wanted his wife or daughters to be embarrassed by an MGM film. "I worship good women, honorable men, and saintly mothers," he declared, once knocking director Erich von Stroheim to the floor for daring to say that all women were whores. But Mayer's influences wasn't limited to the silver screen. Behind the scenes, he had an iron grip over his stars' personal lives. He had an open-door policy that allowed actors to pour out their problems to him in a judgment-free zone. Mayer gained immense insight into their secrets. One director noted he would prod you and question you and suck you dry of any knowledge. And also with him loving holy women and saintly women, it wasn't because he just loved holy saintly women in his movies ways that he was showcasing the traditional values of America's, wholesome family. It was because during that era, that's the type of films, family-friendly, puritanical films, what was making the studios the most money. They were what was most popular. So he pushed that. I don't think it was necessarily just a good deed, but to be fair, nonetheless, it was an era where it's not like today. You wasn't gonna see, premarital or over-sensualized youths and stuff. Like a Euphoria during that era would never happen. This control extended to orchestrating his starless dating life and even marriage. If a romance bloomed against his wishes, Mayer ended it quickly. Rumors of his villainy are legendary, including one scandalous tale involving Clark Gable, which I did a video for too, and a murder cover-up. Allegedly, Gable caused a fatal car crash, and Mayer orchestrated a cover-up by finding a patsy to take the fall. Though unconfirmed, the story gives insight to Mayer's sinister reputation.
True story of MGM was that there were numerous affairs going on, there was sexual promiscuity.
And the publicity department basically knew the quote-unquote vice that each star had, and it was simply dealt with.
When reality contradicted the clean, wholesome image Mayer wanted his studio to project, he would stop at nothing to keep the studio's marquee names out of the gossip columns and out of trouble.
Anything unpleasant, whether it be a bad marriage or something sordid in their past, would be glossed over or gotten rid of.
Gable supposedly ran over somebody, maybe even killed the guy.
Even criminal acts were allegedly covered up.
But the private police force covered it up. Gable was too important an investment to let anything like that even be hinted at.
Mayer's devotion to MGM was all-consuming. His workdays stretched over 12 hours, most of it spent on the studio lot, following advice from fellow mogul William Randolph Hearst. Mayer even built a bungalow that doubled as both an office and living quarters, allowing him to immerse himself entirely in MGM's operations. And let's not forget Mayer's role in creating one of Hollywood's most illustrious traditions, the Academy Awards. As a founding force behind the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts, and Sciences, Mayer sought to bring harmony to the film industry, so we can thank him for the Oscars. And Louis B. Mayer didn't just run MGM. He lived, breathed, and manipulated it, shaping Hollywood's golden age while leaving behind a legacy shrouded in both glory and scandal. His iron fist, control, and ruthless tactics ensured MGM's dominance, but they also pointed him as one of the most controversial figures in Tinseltown history. Fun fact, Mayer was also an intense germaphobe and a hypochondriac. He spent his entire life obsessing over his health and made sure to see his doctor every day for around 30 minutes each day. In fact, Mayer treated her better than he treated his stars. She had her own driver that carried her to and from the studio lot for their daily meetups. The post-war years hit MGM like a blockbuster flop, with profits evaporating quickly. By 1947, the once glittering studio had only 6 high-grossing films to its name, a stark drop from 22 the previous year. In a desperate bid to salvage the sinking ship, MGM axed many of its top producers and executives. Even the mighty Louis B. Mayer, renowned as Big Picture Man, felt the squeeze from the studio's parent company to tighten expenses. Under mounting pressures to find a new prodigy similar to Irving Thalberg, Mayer brought in Doré Shary from RKO. Shary started on July 14, 1948, as vice president in charge of production, working under Mayer's scrutinizing gaze. This change signaled stormy seas ahead, with longtime studio insiders predicting MGM's eventual downfall. By August 1951, Mayer's reign came to an end, and by mutual consent with Lowe's, his resignation marked the closing act of Hollywood's Golden Age era. On his final day, a red carpet stretched out in front of the Thalberg building, where executives, actors, and staff lined up to applaud him, reminiscent of a scene from one of his own grand productions. He was so respected, recalled June Caldwell, Eddie Mannix's secretary. In 1952, Mayer took a bold leap into the world of widescreen cinema, becoming chairman of the board and the largest shareholder of Cinerama. He envisioned producing Paint Your Wagon using the revolutionary format. However, this dream fizzled out, and by 1954, Mayer exited Cinerama when the company was sold. Behind the scenes, Mayer's departure was more scandalous than any film plot. His iron grip on MGM had made him him both revered and feared, and his exit paved the way for whispers of intrigue and backroom deals. Mayer's attempts to recapture his former glory as an independent producer never quite materialized, leaving a legacy tinged with both triumph and turmoil. As the lights dimmed on Mayer's storied career, Hollywood transitioned into a new era, forever marked by the rise and fall of one of its most formidable power brokers. Now, let's get into his personal life before, we wrap it up. In the scandalous saga of Hollywood mogul Louis B. Mayer, 1904 marked a pivotal year. The young and unproven Mayer married Margaret Schenberg. While still broke and down and out, Schenberg stood by him through the meteoric rise to fame and fortune, sticking it out for a jaw-dropping 43 years, a near eternity in Hollywood terms. Behind the glamorous facade, Mayer ruled his household with an iron fist, much like he did in the cutthroat film industry. As his nephew once stated, "In our family, all the basic decisions were made by him. Were we afraid of him? Yes." End quote. This tyrannical behavior had a dark repercussion on his private life. Mayer had 2 daughters with Margaret, Edith and Irene, but they weren't fond of him. By the end of his life, he was bitterly estranged from Edith, even going so far as to disinherit her from his will due to her husband's liberal political leanings, because he was considered a conservative publicly. And so it was embarrassing that one of his daughters is marrying a liberal man like that.
Fueled by ambition and dreaming of America, Mayer left home and moved to Boston when he was a teenager. There he met his first wife, Margaret Schenberg. The demure Margaret, who came from a well-to-do Jewish family, represented everything he wanted in a woman. The couple married in 1904. Their 2 daughters, Edie and Irene, were born soon after. But when his own marriage began to fall apart, the movie mogul's fatherly image and staunch family values would be called into question. By 1933, Louis B. Mayer, now 48, had settled into the demanding schedule of a movie mogul. His salary of more than $1 million a year made him the highest-paid executive in America. His personal fortune was the equivalent of $40 million today. His family life was beginning to fray.
Margaret Schenberg was a sweet woman in many ways, but was completely lost in the world of glamour of Hollywood.
Her idea of family was the 4 of them. His idea of family was the entire MGM studio.
When Margaret, now in her early 50s, had a hysterectomy, their marriage deteriorated further. Though he had chastised others for cheating, Mayer now increasingly sought the company of the sexy starlets that passed through his office.
Well, in the 1930s, Louis B. Mayer became infatuated with Jean Howard. In the later 30s, he found another actress named Beatrice Robertson.
There's one story, Mayer introducing Lena Horne at a press conference. And according to the story, all of a sudden, Lena Horne felt Mayer's hand coming underneath the table, going up her skirt, and that was the end of the press conference.
And for whatever reason, these women found this blatant offer of buying their love very upsetting and would usually break off the relationship with him.
Mayer's relationship with his daughters, Edie and Irene, was also strained. Both daughters married within the movie industry, the only world they knew. In 1930, Edie wed a rising studio executive named William Getz, and Irene married David O. Selznick, a successful independent producer, later known for making Gone with the Wind.
How do you become estranged from your own daughter? I don't know. Mayer's abuse of power wasn't limited to the boardroom. It extended into the bedroom as well. Enter Jean Howard, an actress who caught Mayer's roving eye. When she rejected his advances, Mayer chased her around the room in a desperate attempt to force her affection. When Howard sought refuge in the arms of agent Charles Feldman, Mayer's retaliation was swift and merciless. He banned Feldman from the MGM lot and blacklisted his clients, proving he was the source of losers. But Mayer's obsession with Howard didn't end there. He proposed marriage and promised to divorce his wife if Howard accepted. When she refused, Mayer took it hard, so hard in fact that he reportedly attempted to take his own life by leaping from a window. Margaret Schenberg endured Mayer's infamy. His wife endured all the cheating and infamy for decades until 1947, when she finally called it quits. If Mayer was heartbroken, he had a weird way of showing it. Just a year later, he married his second wife, Lorena Layson, and remained with her until his passing. Mayer's private life was as opulent as his public persona. His St. Cloud Road home in Eastgate, Bel Air was the scene of lavish Sunday brunches that attracted statesmen, former U.S. presidents, and Hollywood elites alike. These gatherings featured buffet suppers, drinks, penny ante, card games, and movie screenings. Mayer himself avoided drinking alcohol, and he wasn't too fond of fine dining and gambling, preferring simpler pleasures. Some say these parties were more for him to collect intel on the guest for future favors or blackmail, and that's why he was always sober, even though everyone else was drunk. In 1951, Mayer's illustrious career was capped with an honorary Oscar from steering MGM for over 25 years. Screenwriter Charles Brackett praised him for guiding MGM's production policy with foresight, aggressiveness, and a real desire for taste and quality, crediting Mayer for nurturing new talent and perfecting the Hollywood star system. Despite his tyrannical methods, Mayer's legacy is complicated. Editor Sam Marks summed it up, saying, "His reputation is far worse than it should be. He had to be strong to do his job, and he couldn't do that without making enemies," end quote. Director Clarence Brown once drew a scandalous comparison between Louis B. Mayer and newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst, saying, "Louis B. Mayer made more stars than all the rest of the producers in Hollywood put together. He knew how to handle talent. He knew that to be successful, he had to have the most successful people in the business working for him. He was like Hearst in the newspaper business. He made an empire out of the thing," end quote. But karma has a twisted sense of humor, and Mayer's life ended in a torment that rivaled the most tragic of the stars. At 73 years old, leukemia hobbled the once mighty mogul, reducing him to a shadow of his former self. On his last day, Mayer endured a grueling 20 blood transfusions before descending into hallucinations and finally slipping into a coma. It was a grim finale, befitting a man who lived a life of intense highs and scandalous lows.
In the mid-1940s, Mayer, now in his 60s, met the widow of an advertising executive, Lorena Danker, and once again fell in love. This time he would find the joy and companionship he'd been longing for.
And they surprised Hollywood and actually did get married.
Evenings dancing and trips with Lorena took Mayer away from the office, as did his new hobby, horse racing.
There they go. Louis B. Mayer, cheer the horses on.
Stockholders of MGM and Nick Skink at MGM weren't so thrilled that Louis B. Mayer was spending more and more time at the track. Why isn't he at the studio?
Alarmed by the studio's sagging bottom line, Skank began to search for a replacement. In 1948, Skank appointed a rising young executive, Dory Sherry, to be associate vice president in charge of production at MGM. Though Sherry reported to Mayer, it was clear to most that he was eager for MGM's aging lion to retire. Mayer attempted to assert control.
He made a fatal phone call to New York and said, "Look, it's either Sherry or me." And it's all that Nicholas Schenck needed to hear.
Within weeks, Mayer was publicly forced out of the studio he had spent a lifetime building.
I think he felt the way many people who build an empire and then lose it feel. Betrayed, unappreciated, angry. After all, here's a man who had been with the studio since the middle of the 1920s.
Exiled from MGM, Mayer attempted to become an independent producer.
And nobody wanted to do business with Louis B. Mayer anymore because he wasn't MGM.
His vision was that one day they would come back begging him, that Dory Sherry would fall on his face, and they would come back begging him, but that never happened.
He worked behind the scenes to try to gather enough stock to buy back power at MGM, and he was exposed at a stockholder meeting.
The stockholders voted against him. It was a devastating blow. By now, the 75-year-old producer's health was also failing. Spots on his lungs had developed into cancer. A week later, on October 29, 1957, Mayer died of leukemia. Thousands of stars, many of whom owed their careers to him, paid tribute to the legendary mogul at his funeral.
And it was considered a sad moment in Hollywood history.
But what's tragic is that Louis B. Mayer loved the Hollywood ending. He loved the happy ending, and his own life didn't end that way at all.
However, his name remains synonymous with movie making at its best.
His genius for filmmaking was that he realized that most people's lives are very painful, very difficult, and full of obstacles. And in his films, he would give them an escape from that.
Mayer's influence over American cinema was so profound that biographer Scott Amon observed, "Mayer's view of America became America's view of itself," end quote. The glitz, the glamour, the stars, the music, every element of MGM's film reflected Mayer's vision. Audiences around the globe would often applaud at the mere sight of the MGM lion the minute they saw that lion on screen, a testament to Mayer's enduring legacy. At Mayer's funeral in 1957, Hollywood luminary Spencer Tracy captured the essence of Mayer's ambition. The story he wanted to tell was the story of America, the land for which he had an almost furious love, born of gratitude and of contrast with the hatred in the dark land of his boyhood across the seas. It was this love of America that made him an authority on America, end quote. Yet behind the curtains of patriotism and cinematic magic lay a man whose methods were as ruthless as they were effective. Mayer didn't just shape Hollywood, he dominated it, wielding his power with a mix of charisma and cruelty. His rise to the pinnacle of the film industry was paved with broken dreams and shattered lives, a stark contrast to the idealized America he so fervently portrayed on screen. Louis B. Mayer's life was a Hollywood epic in its own right, a tale of triumph, tyranny, and ultimate tragedy. While he crafted the dreams of millions, his own story remains a sobering reminder of the darker side of fame and fortune. And though he crafted the dreams of millions, he also destroyed many, many people along the way. And though I get the articles and people that come out in his defense, family and stuff, a lot of times, like I'm sure even Diddy has family members that would want to come out in his defense because they know Diddy, the family member. But you cannot discredit the stories of so many that these things happen to just because that's your uncle or just because that's your father or grandfather, or whatever the case may be. These are some very scary things, and sometimes we do have people in our family that do some pretty terrible things. So disturbing is disturbing, and you have to call out disturbing things and not make excuses for it. So in the story of Louis B. Mayer, it's controversial. You will find people that feel like, well, it's Hollywood. He had to be like that. These stars were out of control. They needed a strong father figure to get them together. I mean, they were drinking, they were reckless, they were partying, they were cheating on their spouses and being bold about it. They were getting into a lot of trouble. They were, in a sense, like kids, reckless kids with endless amount of money, fame, access to substances, and they needed someone strong to keep them in line. And some people even argue that when they had people like Louis B. Mayer and a couple other studio execs that I'll be doing videos for in the coming future, Hollywood was in better conditions in terms of society was not as demoralized as it is now. Movies were not as crazy as it is now. There was some form of wholesomeness, with good values in them, and morality was not where it's at now, at an all-time low now. Those things wouldn't have flied back then. And that goes to the comment, should we bring back shame? But guys, the sad reality is, though the movies were wholesome and had American values, behind the scenes, these people were terrible. They were terrible, and whatever image they were portraying on screen to you in their films, on camera, that's not how they were in their real lives. And off camera, they were pretty terrible people. So I don't know. There was never an era of true wholesomeness, if you say. It was pretty bad all the time. All the time. There was never a great era, really. Even biblically, down to the Israelites in the wilderness. It was just some terrible times, right? There was never that era. Though it's a lot worse, yes, today. But I don't know. It's no justification to have the Louis B. Mayers of the world. And just know that there are many more Louis B. Mayers of the world in Hollywood today that still rule with an iron fist. In the comments below, I will pin my video on Fixers that I did, Hollywood Fixers, and that one's very interesting. You won't want to miss that one. Check that out. I love you guys so much. Thank you for tuning in. If you like the music you're listening to, the link is in the description. I'll see you guys on the next one.